Hi, this is Jared with MetalsPeak. Today I'm reviewing the latest release from Chicago-based symphonic industrial band Mechina. It's called Empyrean, and it was released on January 1st by the band themselves, completely self-funded, self-released. So kudos to them for that. On the brutality scale, I gave Empyrean a 9 out of 10. This is one of those albums that really makes me question whether or not brutality is even like a valid or reliable measure of an album's quality. I mean, don't get me wrong, this album has all the shit you'd expect from a metal album. It has the thick, down-tuned guitars, the dry, long roars, a beefy rhythm section, blast beats that go off like miniguns, etc. But where this album really succeeds in the kind of the heavy or the brutal sense of it is just the sheer scope of the album. From the first notes, it becomes obvious that Empyrean was a massive undertaking built around orchestral arrangements, which undoubtedly made it a challenge to write and record, and also makes it a challenge to the listener as well. And when I say the album is a challenge to listen to, I'm not saying it's difficult. I'm just saying there's so much going on here sonically that it's a lot like drinking out of a fire hose. Um, I guess I've always maintained that a metal album is a quote unquote success if it can really get my heart racing and my adrenaline pumping, and this one just does it in spades. Usually nothing is safe within 3 feet of me after listening to this album or while I'm listening to it. In the songwriting department, I gave the album a 10 out of 10. Empyrean is spectacularly well written. Its breadth and its scope is almost overwhelming at times. Lyrically, the album tackles, it kind of scours a futuristic, kind of a galactic landscape where the album's protagonist spends a lot of his time in kind of an existential struggle, ruminating on the past mistakes of humanity, most of which were brought about by conflicts around religious ideals, and eventually he shows us a new humanity unfettered by devotion to any deity and free to quote unquote conquer the stars. Musically, as I mentioned earlier, the foundation of the album was laid by orchestral arrangements. The strings and horns and whatnot are really driving the proceedings instead of the guitars. Not to say that the metal parts of the album are just background, but I think there's a unique synergy here between all the instruments that a lot of symphonic metal acts don't really manage to capture. Um, I've been listening to metal for a long time, and to be honest with you, sometimes the shit just starts to bleed together for me. So as a result, variability and catchiness go a long way with me as a fan of metal, and as a reviewer. So what I particularly enjoy about this album is that all the songs kind of have their own identity. The album has hooks all over the place, whether it's the guitar hooks on the chorus of Asterion, the anthemic vocal choruses on Interregnum, Anathema, or the album's just completely epic closer, Terminus, or even the just positively infectious strings and female voices on the album's eighth track, Eleutheria. There's just shit all over this album that's going to get stuck in your head for days. I think one of the album's primary songwriting strengths is one area where a lot of modern metal albums miss the mark, and that's kind of building tension and anticipation before just hitting this crescendo and just bludgeoning you over the head with how heavy it is. You know, um, I think if you pick any recent death metal slash deathcore slash gent release from the last couple years, what do you usually get? You usually get 10 tracks. The first of which is some sort of ambient noise track that's kind of meant to set the mood, but 9 times out of 10, it's just eating up tape. Um, if you hear nothing else on this album, just listen to the first 2 tracks. The opening track, Emporia, does a fantastic job of setting the tone and really acting as a harbinger to the rest of the album. But what I really enjoy about where Aporia bleeds into the next song, Asterion, is when the tension on Aporia kind of reaches its apex and the drums and the guitars and the bass and everything just kick in on Asterion. Um, I'll be honest with you. The shit gives me goosebumps every time I listen to it. It's completely visceral and just a really well done album. That's just one example of just the superior songwriting that's on display here. So for production, I give this a 9 out of 10. Production was a bit of a sore spot, a bit of a challenge with this album. If you've been tracking this band before or since before last fall, you'll know that the initial version of the album was met with some pretty harsh criticism where the production was concerned. For my part, I bought the album on iTunes after waiting for months and months and months for new material from these guys. And to be honest, I really had the wind knocked out of my sails when Asterion started. But you're saying, wait, Jared, didn't you just say that Asterion gave you goosebumps? Well, yeah, I did. But that's after the album was remastered. Prior to that, I was literally almost brought to tears of frustration when, after sitting there eagerly while Aporia played, the bottom just fell out of the fucking thing when Asterion started. There was almost no low end. The bass was nearly absent. The drum tone was god awful. I just had no idea what the fuck was happening. I didn't panic immediately. I fiddled with my equalizers, changed out the buds of my earphones. Nothing helped. And then I thought maybe it was like the iTunes bitrate, that maybe something was going on there, that maybe it would sound better on a physical album. I didn't get around to actually getting the physical album, so I never did hear the difference. But part of the reason I held off on ordering the physical album is because I noticed on the band's Facebook that they were pretty much getting almost universally negative feedback about the production quality of the album from other fans. So I definitely wasn't the only one hearing this. So after a couple months, the band did some tweaking and came back with a much beefier and much more satisfying mix, which actually did justice to the album's scope and breadth. So, on listening to the first copy, I think part of the challenge here of where the production was concerned on this one was that the band was trying not to drown out the orchestral stuff with the guitars and the drums, and I totally get that. I think they made the guitars and everything else like too quiet on the first run, and so I think they increased the volume on some of that stuff and really kind of leveled it out. So nothing's really covered up in the mix on this one, at least on the remastered version. So everything sounds really well balanced in this one. So good job, guys. Crisis averted. For repeat listenability, give this one a 10 out of 10. Early production hiccups aside, I honestly can't stop listening to this album. Empyrean pretty much does everything that keeps me coming back to a metal album. Again, it has great hooks, and there's so much going on here. Between the more metal side of things and the more classical symphonic side of things, that I hear something different every time I listen to it. And I know it's a concept album, and so most of those are best enjoyed front to back, and certainly this album works very well as a front to back listen. And there isn't a bad song on the album, but if there are certain tracks that I just keep going back to, can't get enough of, it would probably be the openers, Emporia and Asterion, as well as the eighth track, Eleutheria, and then again the album's closer, Terminus, which are just phenomenal songs. It seems like even recently I've picked up and we've been sent a lot of new albums that I've been listening to, and I'll give them one or two spins and set them aside. And when I'm really wanting to listen to something that's just going to pump me up and get me inspired to do whatever I need to do, I just, for whatever reason, keep landing on Empyrean again. So it's that fucking good. On the artwork and layout, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I don't have the physical copy of the CD, so I can't comment on the total layout of the album, but the cover art is pretty awesome, and I think it really aptly captures the mood of the music. So it's subtle, but it definitely gets the job done as far as letting what the album's about. Kind of gives you that sci-fi vibe that you're looking for, so no complaints there. So overall, I'm giving the album a 9 out of 10. Empyrean is simply just an amazing album, and will likely find itself at the top echelon of my favorite albums of 2013, if not the highly coveted, right, number one spot in my top 10 for the year. I mean, every time I spin this thing, I'm completely blown away by what Mechina has done here, by their talent, and I'm especially impressed by the overall quality of the output, and again, just the breadth and scope of what they've done here, because they're completely self-funded, they're a completely do-it-yourself operation. You don't see this kind of grandiose output from bands that don't have the backing of a major label. Bands like Demo Borgir, who have Nuclear Blast and can actually hire an entire symphony to play their arrangements. I mean, these guys are doing this all themselves, and it's just completely awesome that they're doing this stuff. So, long story short, it's an awesome album. Go pick it up. And well done, guys. Well fucking done.